ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ನಾನು ಯಮುನಾ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಮೆಂಬರ್ ಆಫ್ ಸಿಟಿಜನ್ಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ಸಿಟಿಜನ್ ಗ್ರೂಪ್. ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಹೋಸ್ಟ್ ನಾನು. Welcome to the 10th episode of C4C Conversations. At the outset, I request all of you to please mute your audio. We have an amazing, interesting speaker who's joining us and who's taken his time out. Just to set a context about C4C Conversation, some of you will remember it all started on 30th August during pandemic, where we started the C4C Conversation with Journey of Bengaluru from Antarctica to 15360 and started by Uday Kumar, and followed by a lot of different varieties of sessions from on PTA and Kote of Bengaluru, programs on details on the waste segregation by Mr. Venkatesh, and learn to breathe your way out during the pandemic. These sessions have actually ignited a lot of information to us, followed by sessions on Sakala mission by Government of Karnataka, and Urban Animals and Us by Priya Chetty. Varied interesting topics that has been spoken about. I think one of the sessions that I personally was very inspiring was by Mr. Sri Manjunath Prasad IAS Commissioner BBMP on 21st of March, where we spoke about BBMP and citizens. So we are here to bring in the right set of conversations during these times, and we have our speaker, Dr. Bhujang Shetty, the chairperson of Narayan Netralaya, to have this session today. What we are looking at is, before we embark on today's fantastic journey on understanding valuable health inputs for the present times, and especially post-COVID scenarios, by Dr. Bhujang Shetty, I would request Raj to give an overview about C4C activities. Rajkumar Dugar, founder and convener of Citizens for Citizens, over to you.
Thanks, Yamuna. Ellarigu namaskara matte suswagata. On behalf of C4C, I extend a warm welcome to all of you. The second wave seems to be ebbing, but we are definitely not yet out of the woods. Wisdom says we need to learn more from the past, from the experiences of others, and adapt to the new situation such that we can overcome the present pandemic and move forward in a safe and acceptable manner. I am particularly happy that Bengaluru's eye doctor and an excellent human being, Dr. Bhujang Shetty, is with us today to share his valuable inputs to help us in this journey. At this juncture, I would like to give a very brief update on C4C's activities in the recent past. C4C's focus has been on subjects like traffic, public transport, afforestation, general civic issues, etc. On 1st June this month, BBMP Nodal Officer Dr. Vaishnavi gave the go-ahead for C4C to start identifying potential beneficiaries in the designated categories of disadvantaged people in the 18 to 44 years age group. Our team scouted around Ward 93 and collected required data for 20 such persons. On 7th June, we ensured these people came to Vasantnagar PHC at the appointed time, made them feel comfortable, and in Dr. Vaishnavi's presence, these people received their vaccinations. After half an hour of observation, they left with C4C N95 mask and a packed full meal each. We even organized lunch for the 20 PHC staff as an expression of gratitude. On 5th June, C4C distributed dry ration kits to identified needy people. On 8th June, we came to know of a labor colony off Queens Road where masks were required. We immediately went there and handed over C4C's N95 masks to them. We also facilitated vaccination of 50 bedridden elderly people in the age group of 88 to 97 years by BBMP at Doddanekundi. On 24th March last year, C4C was one of the first to facilitate physical distancing by painting lines along footpaths. This was emulated by many everywhere in different ways. This year, with lockdown being eased from 14th June, Team C4C went about reinforcing facilitation of physical distancing at various places in Vasantnagar. C4C has been in constant touch with smart city officials with inputs and suggestions pertaining to their work on Palace Road and Miller Road also. Shivajinagar MLA Shri Rizwan Arshad met C4C on 8th June to discuss our inputs. He was clearly impressed and scheduled an inspection of the two roads with us and officials from the smart city, traffic police, etc. This happened on 11th June, and most of our points were accepted during this inspection. One of the biggest decisions was pertaining to width of Palace Road near Shangri-La. The inspection resulted in officials agreeing to increase the road width from 25 feet to 33 feet. This will bring great relief to the two-way traffic movement in this particular stretch. As an icing on the cake, today afternoon, Additional Commissioner of Police for Traffic, Sri Ravikante Gowda, spent about 90 minutes studying our inputs at 4 places in the CBD. He has accepted most of our inputs and given necessary instructions for follow-up action. The 4 places are Chalukya Junction, Old High Grounds Junction near Balabrui, Palace Cross Road Junction near BDA, and Udaya TV Junction near Cantonment Railway Station. I am also happy to inform that C4C was invited by Southwestern Railways to carry out tree planting at the newly built Sir M. Vishweshwaraya terminal, which awaits inauguration and is said to be one of the best railway stations in the country. Some of you may know that on the Koti Vriksha Senya platform, we have already ensured good tree planting at both Yashwantpura and Channasandra railway stations. For Sir MV terminal, we have submitted our proposals, and coincidentally today, we have received an in-principle verbal go-ahead from the railways. Our plan is for a theme park with about 300 trees and with a dense urban forest right in the middle of this. I must add that SWR, that is Southwestern Railways, has appreciated C4C's gesture of organizing oxygen concentrators for their Bengaluru Divisional Hospital, which has helped them save lives. These have been some of the happenings covering C4C activities during the last fortnight only. We are confident of continuing all our efforts towards improving quality of life in Nama Bengaluru. Dhanyavadagalu.
Just before we begin our journey today, let me take this pleasure of introducing the speaker of the 10th episode of C4C Conversations. His name is a synonym with not just the eye, but also humanism. He's probably the only eye specialist in the world who has written a book on a subject which has hardly anything to do with the eye. Be the God You Are, and that which is now available on Amazon, Flipkart, etc. And the power of love. Dr. K. Bhujang Shetty is the founder, chairman, and managing director of the well-known Narayan Nethralaya eye hospitals. There are already 4 centers, that is Narayan Nethralaya in Bangalore at Rajaji Nagar, Narayana Health City, Indira Nagar, and Banerghetta Road, and many more services to come to. A quick brief on his childhood and how his journey was. He was born in a village near Kundapur in the year 1953, and he spent the first 10 years, a decade, in his village, later shifted to Bangalore, and schooling was from Baldwin Boys High School in early 60s. And he completed his MBBS degree in 1978 from Bangalore Medical College. Went on to complete his master's degree in ophthalmology in 82 from the Regional Institute of Ophthalmology, Minto Eye Hospital. Sorry. Yeah. Quickly to take it forward, Dr. Bhujang Shetty started his ophthalmology practice in a small clinic in the 80s. He had a great vision to grow and foresight to anticipate future needs and the enthusiasm to develop the same. The clinic was shifted to the current building in Rajajinagar in October 1993. He ensured that a simple eye clinic became a multi-specialty eye hospital and started growing year by year, serving more people. To meet the growing demand for the quality eye care in a modern sophisticated equipment were acquired, he has actively encouraged the development of various subspecialties at Narayan Nethralaya, and he has been responsible for transformation of Narayan Nethralaya into the largest super specialty eye hospital in Karnataka. Dr. Bhujang Shetty is an accomplished cataract and phaco-emulsification surgeon. Some of the awards conferred on Dr. Shetty for all his amazing services in the field of ophthalmology include the Kempegowda Prashasti in 2010 and Professor D.K. Subramanian Oration Award, Dr. A.K. Grover Oration Award, Mrs. T. Agarwal Gold Medal Award, and Vocational Excellence Award. He's also the founder of the Bangalore Ophthalmic Society. Dr. Bhujan Shetty is also a practical spiritual personality. His book, The Power of Love, has inspired many leaders and masses alike towards a pragmatic philosophy for everyday living. This book is also available on narayannetralaya.org. You should read, you should share, and you should probably gift it to your loved ones. On his personal life, he's married to Srimati Rajkamal Shetty and is blessed with a daughter, Ms. Nayana Shetty, and son, Dr. Naren Shetty. Today, we have requested Dr. Bhujang Shetty, sir, to cover relevant topics of eyes, regarding to eyes and COVID-19, and also on eye donation, which will help our fellow human beings. I will share the link to pledge your eye donation at the end of the call. We would also like to hear about his advice on how our food, the way we consume, is relevant to our health in these post-COVID times, particularly with reference to the long-term comorbidities like diabetes. Now, I request Dr. Bhujang Shetty to address us, and thank you so much.
Well, coming to the subject, Raj Kumar was very particular that I start with the COVID and how it is related to the eye and any issues, so that COVID, any problem we have as far as the eye is concerned. I just want to tell you all that actually the first COVID cases was discovered in China by an eye surgeon. He saw some very strange red eyes coming forward, and then he investigated further, and then he was the one who set the alarm, and who said this could be something strange, this could be COVID. But of course, he was initially penalized for that and ridiculed, and then later they accepted that he was right. But unfortunately, he died of COVID. Very young eye surgeon, but he died of COVID. That's about the history. But fortunately, in our country, not really too many cases of COVID from the eye or through the eye. You all know that COVID enters either through the mouth or the nose. That's why most of the time that we are all being asked to wear masks. But actually, eye is also one of the routes. But luckily for us, we haven't seen too many cases, infecting the eyes initially. But as you have seen, not so many in the first wave, but in the second wave, the so-called what is the black fungus. It's very unfortunate because it's a very, very deadly diseases. Not that black fungus or mucor was not at all seen in our country. Actually, when compared to other places in the world, we see the highest number even before COVID was there. But then what we used to see in a year or so, now we are seeing almost twice that number in a day. That is the difference. After the second wave especially, and all are scratching their heads to find out why this has happened. Well, we had the first wave. We didn't see too many of these black fungus problems. Why suddenly these huge numbers? Of course, we really don't know exactly why it has happened. Only thing we are sure of is that this fungus, it is there everywhere in our in our body, in the environment, in the soil, and as long as our immunity is good, they can't do anything to us. It is when our immunity goes down, these fungus, they get the upper hand, and they cause infection and they give us trouble. This is exactly what has happened during the second wave in this COVID. Actually, COVID itself, this COVID it acts in very number of ways, affecting huge, almost all organs of our body, including our immunity. First thing, when COVID attacks us or you get infected, it depresses your immunity. Next, of course, it causes, once anybody gets COVID, anybody naturally they'll be under huge stress. And when they are under stress, we all know that again reduces our immunity. And if unfortunately they become serious and get admitted, and to save their lives, doctors sometimes need to give steroids. And steroid is, as you all know, is a double-edged sword. It in one way saves your life, but also it has got very bad side effects. And one of them is that your immunity again goes down. So all these things put together reduces the immunity. And the most common way this happens is uncontrolled diabetes. COVID, stress, as well as steroids, all of this can push your diabetes way high blood sugars. And that high blood sugars, if not controlled properly, definitely reduces your immunity. And one other thing is that more than 2 to 3 times the number of people who are diabetics, there are what are called pre-diabetics. If we have 80 million people who are diabetics in a country, maybe 3 times that are pre-diabetics. That means they are on the borderline, but they are not aware. When you test your blood, they say that you are not a diabetic, and they're quite happy that way. But they could trip anytime. So whenever they're put under stress, either COVID or infection or steroids, again, and they may be aware of that. And that again can reduce immunity. And most important thing is that, especially in the second wave, the people have started self-medicating themselves. People, learn from neighbors, friends. Okay, he got sick, he took this medicine. My friend got sick, he got that medicine. And through WhatsApp and other social media, they get a lot of information, and they tend to self-medicate. And you all know that 80 to 90% of the people who get COVID stay at home, and they get home isolated, and they are advised to take some medicines at home. Usually what happens, self-medication, and even this, they all have come to know that steroids is a very good drug for COVID, but definitely not in the first stage or the first week. It has to be given in the second, and that has to be monitored by a doctor and given by a doctor. It cannot be self-medicated. And we come to know that in the second wave, a huge number of people have self-medicated themselves with the steroid, and steroids have been given at the wrong time, in the wrong dosage, maybe for the wrong duration also. This also has caused a lot of issues and problems. And one other medicine that has been abused is that antibiotics. A survey was done somewhere in Gujarat where around 250 cases of this black fungus was analyzed, and 100% of these people had received antibiotics. Antibiotics, again, have, of course, they are needed in certain circumstances, and they also give these, these fungus and other bacteria which already are there, the upper hand, and all this put together. Maybe that's why we have got these huge numbers in the second wave. But then, anyway, that is the cause, maybe. But if you have any of these issues, like if you're a borderline diabetic or if you're a diabetic, you must and should not, of course, during the COVID infection, if you're at home, repeatedly test your blood sugars, make 100% sure that it is under control. Even if you're not a diabetic, you should test, because you could have been a pre-diabetic and you could have, jumped over the cliff, and then you could have become a diabetic. You're not aware, and that again can reduce your immunity, and then you are, prone to get this black fungus. So kindly keep checking blood sugars, not only during infection, after you recover also, for maybe for a month or two, so that make sure if you're a diabetic, have it under control. If you are not diabetic, make sure that you didn't become a diabetic during this period. Only problem is that once you get this, it's a deadly disease. Usually it starts in the nose, goes to your sinuses, then from the sinuses gets into the eye, and if not treated, it goes to the brain, where usually it is fatal. It is a very dangerous disease if not caught early. They say we have to catch it as early as possible, especially in the nose. So if you have any suspicion, if you have had COVID, if you have especially diabetes, if you have been admitted, if you have taken steroids, and then suddenly you develop some blockages in the nose, or a bloody or a black discharge from the nose, a swelling or a pain on one side of the face, or a headache, or a toothache, or redness or pain in the eye, immediately you need to report to doctor. You know, to see better, first you rush to an ENT doctor or an eye surgeon. They will test and they will rule it out, or they will rule it in. They may have to do some investigations. But in case you have been diagnosed with the black fungus, you will require admission. You most probably you will require surgery. They need to remove all the tissue that's dead there and the fungus. And most important, you will be have to give an antifungal treatment. The whole treatment usually takes 2 to 3 weeks. Hospitalization maybe for that time, and then if it is caught early, if it is treated well, the prognosis is good. But once it goes to the eye and you have neglected, some vision has dropped, then sometimes you lose the eye. Sometimes the eyes need to be removed, and if it, as I told you, if it does go to your brain, it becomes fatal. So let's hope, let's all be careful. Let's not self-medicate ourselves. And in case any of these signs and symptoms are seen, seek early medication. That's about the black fungus. And Rajkumar was also very keen that I say a few words on eye donation. Of course, you all must be knowing about eye donation and must have heard about it. It's a very, very noble thing to do. And we all know that, there are lakhs and lakhs of people waiting to get their, vision through eye donation only. Why only through eye donation? There are a huge number of people who have what is called corneal blindness. That is blindness because of some problem in the front black portion of the eye, either because of injury or infection or some trauma or something like that, and their vision is lost. But eye donation does not mean that all totally blind people can be given sight through eye donation. That's wrong. Actually, if you compare the eye to a watch, only the glass is damaged, but the watch is working very well. The machine is fine. It is showing time, but you can't see it if the glass is damaged. So also, if the glass of the eye is damaged, the person will be blind. And such people, when somebody donates an eye, they can be given a clear glass from the donor's eye, and they are given sight so that they can see in future. There are lakhs and lakhs of people who have this, and unfortunately, so far we do not have what is called the artificial cornea. We are not able to still manufacture that, and these people who have damaged cornea can only be given sight if somebody donates their eyes after death. You all know that eyes are usually donated following death, and it needs to be donated within 6 hours. All you have to do is, the person need not have been pledged their eyes. It depends on the family. If the family members want to donate their eyes, all they have to do is just call up the closest eye bank, and we will be there day or night within maybe 15-20 minutes. And the whole process or the procedure does not take more than 15 to 20 minutes. There is no disfiguration, and it does not come in the way of any of your rituals. So do not worry. Some people are worried what to do, how to take. They feel that they need to take the body to the hospital. No, we will come to your place and we will do the procedure if you all are willing to donate. But unfortunately, you should also remember that eyes are donated unconditionally. You cannot have any condition. There is no money transaction here. We receive the eyes free, and we also give the eyes free. We just donate it. Hospital cannot charge for the eyes, but of course there could be some charges for surgery and other procedures, but definitely not the eye. Eye cannot be neither sold nor bought. And you also, it is unethical for us to reveal whom we have given the eye to, and you should also not insist that. It is just given, as I told you, unconditionally. But during these COVID times, because of COVID and COVID deaths, and we are not sure whether a person has died because of COVID or not. Eye donations have come down tremendously in the last almost a year and a half, and there's huge backlog, and we have really been having a lot of problem in getting more eyes. And I hope C4C people also join hands with us, see how much we can promote eye donation and help people who are sitting in darkness. And of course, last I thought, I will also, since we have been all talking so much about what is called immunity and everybody is talking about immunity, increasing diet, and other issues. So I thought I'll just touch upon diabetes and what we can do about it, how to, what are the things, what are the new things that are there, whether it is really a one-way street or not. I'm just trying to share my screen. Okay, there we are. Is it fine?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is fine.
All right. Okay, great. Well, the title is quite strange. I've written as Reversing Diabetes. We've been taught and we've been told that diabetes is a one-way street, and once you get it, you've got to live with it. Only the best thing that you can do for diabetes is to keep it under control, manage it as it were. But unfortunately, that is not true. It was quite a surprise for me as a doctor also. So I just want to briefly tell you all exactly what has happened and what are the things that people all over the world are following now, and how is it possible to either prevent, treat, or even reverse diabetes. Well, you all know that diabetes has been exploding. When I was a student way back in the early 80s, only about 5% of the adult population in our country suffered from diabetes. Now almost 30% in the last 40 to 50 years. That has almost gone up by 8 to 10 times. Well, and in spite of medication and with all the latest drugs and treatment, usually people end up losing their vision, they losing their kidneys, losing their leg, and all the issues. Although they have taken best of treatment, it is a downhill course. Sorry. All right. This is just numbers. Well, you can see it's staggering. And these are all what's called lifestyle diseases. And in fact, they are all related. They may look so very different, and you have different specialists treating different forms of these diseases. But actually, in truth, they are all one, what is called lifestyle diseases. Well, if you really go to the root of it, what is the cause of all these diseases? I'm just not talking about diabetes. I am talking about all these diseases, including heart, cardiovascular problems, blood pressure, obesity, dementia, autoimmune diseases, and of course, diabetes. The bottom line is what is called insulin resistance. Insulin, you all know, is the hormone that is controls our sugar. And the cause of insulin resistance at the root is what is called carbohydrate intolerance. That means we have been taking excess of carbohydrates in the form of either sugar or sweets or grains or wheat for maybe decades together, 10, 15, 20 years, and body then breaks down. This excess of carbohydrates cause what is called insulin resistance, and insulin resistance is the cause of all these diseases, not just diabetes. Well, you may say, my parents had it, so I got it, so you just accept it, and then say it's in my genes. I don't say that, genes do not play a role. Genes do have their role, but they are not primary. That's why they say that, genes just load the gun. It is the environment that pulls the trigger. And this is shown by when twins, if they are separated and they live in two different environments, maybe one goes to the Western world, one stays back in his village. Although having same genes, because they have grown up in different environments, they have different kinds of diseases. And that just proves that your genes is not primary. So you do not blame everything on your parents or your genes and say, what can I do? It's in my genes. That's not the case. Well, I think first I thought I'll tell you regarding how our body functions. See, actually, we eat carbs and fats and proteins. You all know that they're called macronutrients, and carbohydrates, that is the sweets and the sugars and the grains, they give us glucose, and that is the energy that we need for our sustenance. And we actually, body can run both on carbohydrates and also on fats. But unfortunately, we've been loading the body with so much of carbohydrates. It's now there is so much of carbs and sugar in the blood. The body has gotten used to just burning glucose as energy, and that's how most of us lead our lives. But unfortunately, carbs are not actually the ideal fuel. The ideal fuel is fats and not carbs, and I'll tell you why. Carbohydrates, of course we eat carbs, fats as we like, and when we eat excess of carbs, and that also very, very frequently, some amount of is used for our energy. The other excess of carbohydrates that we have eaten is converted into fats, and that is stored away. So as long as our blood sugar is high, that is, when we eat more and more of carbs, blood sugar is high, then insulin also is spiked. And as long as this insulin is high, the carbs are converted into excess carbs are converted into fats and stored as fat, and it is locked away. And it never can be used as long as you keep eating carbs and insulin is high. And so much so that with time, your excess of fat that you have eaten, excess of carb that you have eaten just get locked away. And that's how you get your belly fat and you become overweight and you become obese. This is, but there is actually fat. Nature has designed fat in such a way that, it stores fat. There is a reason why it stores fat. Fats are actually a very good source of energy, but it is stored for a rainy day. Not recently, of course, in the last maybe 100 or so years, there's plenty of food. Maybe 200 or 5,000 or 10,000 years back, there wasn't so much of food. Or even before 10,000 years, when we were hunters, we might get food once in 1 or 2 days, or maybe during winter, during off season, we don't get food at all. And that's when this fat become useful. Because carbs there is not much place to store carbs. Carbs only about 2,000 calories, which is sufficient for just 1 day. That's all the amount of carbs that we can store. Whereas fats, we have got huge amount of fats, about 100 times more. That means 200,000 calories worth of fats are there. So that actually maybe if, say, for one winter you didn't get any food, or you will not die. There is enough of energy in the form of fat, which could be converted into energy. But as long as you keep eating carbs very, very often during the day, these fats cannot be utilized, and so you become fatter and fatter and fatter. You all must all remember when I was in school, of course, that's about 40, 50 years back, there could be 1 or 2 people who are, fat in that. And he used to be, ridiculed and called fatty, 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 and everybody used to make fun of him. I still remember that. But today you go to school, there will be 1 or 2 people who are really thin, and remainder of all of them are fat. We should ask ourselves why this has happened. And now this is the reason why, because the whatever you eat just gets stored and locked away as fat, and you keep on putting fat as you grow. And so the problem is you are eating excess of carbs. Actually, fat also can be utilized provided you don't eat so much carbs. If you can reduce your carbs, your fat will come into play, and fat is a better fuel. So that's the reason why, and excess of carbs is the cause for all those metabolic diseases, including diabetes. Just that truck I was trying to say, of course, the truck, although it has got a small tank, maybe, I don't know, maybe about 500 liters or so it can, and as soon as it runs out of its own fuel, it will have to run to the next petrol bunk. On top, it's carrying around 100 times more fuel, but it does not have access to that fuel only because there is no plumbing for that. Otherwise, it could run for days together, months together, using the fuel that is carrying on top. That's exactly what's happening to us. We are all carrying 100 times more fuel in the form of fats because we are not giving it a chance to be burnt. And the only way to burn it, you have to reduce your carbohydrates. And if you don't do that, excess of fat is the cause for insulin resistance, and that's the cause for diabetes and all the other diseases put together. So, as I told you, increased carbohydrate is the cause. Increased carbohydrates causes carbohydrate intolerance, raises insulin. And here, we should all realize somehow, some 40, 50 years back, some very influential doctors said that sugar was the culprit, rather fat was the culprit and not sugar. They said all fat people have become fat or obese because of eating saturated fats, and that's why they'll end up with heart problems. And so much so that there was so much fat phobia. Today, if I ask you to eat some eggs, or if I tell you take some saturated fat, what's gone wrong with you, doctor? Definitely, even the common man knows that these fats are not good, because you see everywhere fat-free food and low-fat foods. But actually, that was the mistake, and that mistake has caused this, all of us, these huge numbers of diabetics. And now we have realized that these fats are not related to heart problems, and actually sugar or the carbohydrates, the grains that we eat is the problem. Well, as I told you before, as soon as you eat carbohydrates, your insulin goes up. That is the biggest spiker of our insulin, and higher the insulin, and it's kept that way, in the long run causes insulin resistance, and then all the problems start. Whereas fat has the least amount of effect on your insulin. It does not spike your insulin, and when you eat more of fat instead of your carbs, slowly your insulin resistance comes down, and that's how you can control your insulin resistance. Well, so as I told you, we need to reverse. At present, actually, what we eat, especially in our country, 60 to 70% of our food comes from carbohydrates, either in the form of sweets or sugars, or grains and wheat, and even other cornflakes and the rest, and maybe little, maybe 10, because there's so much of fat phobia, 10 or 15% from fats, and the remaining, of course, 20% from protein. What we need to do is we need to reverse this. Very strange. If you want to, especially if you want to reverse obesity, and not only diabetes, obesity, overweight, and your cholesterol levels. It may sound very strange. I'm asking you to eat fat, and your cholesterol will come down. That's exactly what happens. There's a lot of science to show that. But only thing is, habits die hard. Very difficult to change mindsets, not only amongst patients but even amongst doctors. So this is a change that you need to make if you really want to reduce insulin resistance. You need to reduce your carbohydrates to only around 10% of your diet, proteins moderate, and the remaining amount you have to eat in the form of fats. That's called, some call it a keto diet. And as soon as we say keto, everybody jumps up. Oh my God, keto is a very dangerous, life-threatening diseases and diet. It's not really so. There are different types of ketos, and I'll get to that a little later. So as I told you, the ideal diet to reverse your obesity, diabetes, blood pressure, your cholesterol, your risk for heart diseases, dementia, autoimmune, all these problems can be either prevented, reversed, or even treated by what is called a low carb, healthy fat diet. So when I say fat, it's not that you eat any fat. That is, it has to be healthy fat. And I'll just tell you what are the healthy fats that we can eat and we should eat. Once you do this, slowly the fat in the body, the body uses to use fat as a fuel. So the fat that you have stored away slowly gets back into the system, and that is burnt away. That's how you start losing weight, even if you do not want to. And one other way we can reduce this insulin resistance is by what is called intermittent fasting. I'm sure you must have all heard about it. Actually, fasting is nothing new to us Indians. In every religion, they advise fasting, and they say it's very good for our health. Now it's been scientifically proven. It is extremely useful. And moreover, there's nothing great about it. You need not fast for weeks or months together. In a day, you fast, especially when we go to bed, actually, we fast for 8 to 10 hours every day. But if you can increase this fasting period, just like, if you can have your dinner by around 6 o'clock and next have your breakfast at 8, there you have a 14-hour fasting window. That's the ideal way to have a good intermittent fasting every day. Just have your dinner early and you have your breakfast at 8. You will get that some amount of intermittent fasting. And during this intermittent fasting, you start burning fats. The idea is now we are training this body to use fat as a fuel and not sugar as a fuel. And once you do that, all these issues get reversed. No wonder they used to say, if you eat once, you are a yogi. If you eat twice a day, you are a bogi. And if you eat thrice a day, you become a rogi. That's what they've been saying. Our elders have said that. See, they are wise. We never used to eat 4 and 5 or 6 times. I'm talking about maybe 50, 60, 70 years back, or even if you go to the villages, they eat twice or thrice a day. But here in cities and where there's plenty of food, you do not only have 3 major meals, you have a snack in between each. That means you're eating 6 times a day. And every time you eat, and especially filled with carbs, your sugar spikes, your insulin spikes, and you become fatter and fatter and sicker and sicker. That's the reason. That's why intermittent fasting is a good idea. And of course, exercise, we can't forget. Exercise definitely is necessary. And I don't have to tell you much about that. So you may ask me, what should I avoid? First thing, sugar. There is no doubt. And in any diet you follow, everybody says sugar is sweet poison. There is no doubt about it. Sugar is toxic and sugar is a silent killer. We all say during this COVID times, you eat this and you eat that to improve your immunity. But what I'd say here is, by eating sugar, you're not only, of course, you're getting prone for diabetes and overweight. Eat sugar decreases your immunity. Science has proved time and again that anytime you take sugar, whether you are diabetic or not, your immunity reduces. So during COVID times, if you cannot increase your immunity, at least don't decrease it by eating sugar or sweets, or please avoid them. Of course, that I'm sure everybody knows that sugar is not good, but only problem is sugar is an addiction. We are not able to get out of it. We have got addicted to it, our children have got, and it's very, very difficult to get out of it. It's more, actually, it's like a drug, but somehow you need to get out of that. Yeah. Next, of course, this could surprise you. We are all used to eating either rice, wheat, bread. This is what we eat from morning to evening. How to live without it? There are ways and means, and I'll tell you next what are the alternatives you have. These actually rice, wheat, and bread are just 10-15 minutes away from true sugar. What they are called carbohydrates, and you eat it, and even the so-called whole food grains, it is just a matter of minutes before they get into your bloodstream and the body breaks it down into sugar. So they are all indirect sugars, and it's just a matter of minutes before they raise your blood sugar, they raise insulin, and they cause all these issues as diabetes and heart problems. Next, of course, you may be shocked when I say even fruits and fruit juices you must avoid. You must be say, oh my God, everybody recommends fruits, and how is that now you're saying don't eat fruits? Well, the current day fruits are really not really God-made. They're all man-manipulated fruits. You notice that these fruits, what we eat today, were never the same 30, 40, 50 years back. They are getting bigger and bigger in size. They are getting sweeter and sweeter. How does this happen? They are all genetically modified to give more sugar, to increase in size. So every time you eat any fruit, you to just jack up your sugars again. And especially if you're a diabetic, there is no place for regular all these fruits. Exceptionally, 1 or 2 are there. Even if you eat a banana actually has about 4 teaspoons of sugar. And I'm telling you all this from practical point of view, because I wear what is called a constant blood sugar monitoring device. I can test my blood sugar every 10 minutes. Whatever food I have a doubt, and whether to see whether it is affecting my sugars or not, all I need to eat it and just test my blood sugars. And then lo and behold, within half an hour, if I eat a banana, my blood sugar shoots to about 200. That's the effect of bananas. So kindly, of course, if you're not carbohydrate intolerant and You could have a little fruit, but don't have too much of that, because in the long run it could be harmful. Another problem that we have come across in the last 40, 50 years is processed foods. Processed foods they've got hidden sugar everywhere. They have taken out the nutrients, they have added so many things to make it tasty and sell. So they are not really interested. The industry is not interested in your health, but their profits. So you must be very careful. And also one other thing, the vegetables are healthy, they say, but definitely not starchy vegetables. They are as bad as rice and wheat. They have contain a lot of sugar and they spike your sugars. All seed oils and margarine and cereals, which we all thought was good, definitely we should avoid. Well, you may say then what we could eat. Non-starchy vegetables. Vegetables are definitely good for our health, but not the starchy variety. Non-starchy varieties you could have. They are very, very low in carbohydrates, so it will not spike your sugars. And those of you all who are non-vegetarians, you could definitely eat meat, fish, egg, and of course butters is also is good. And coconut and coconut oil, of course, they are our favorites, and you could use plenty of them. Olive oil is also very good, and nuts are good, but definitely not dry fruits. Nuts are okay. And you may be wondering, a few fruits, berries, strawberries, blackberries, they have very low sugars. And the best of the fruit is avocado. We all say that apple a day keeps the doctor away, but in truth, it is an avocado a day keeps the doctor away. It is a miracle fruit. You could have it one a day and without any issues, with all the benefits. But all of these, whether it is vegetables, meat, fish, egg, must be as natural as possible, as organic as possible. So you may say, because nowadays, everything is commercialized, a lot of pesticides, a lot of toxins are added everywhere, not only to our vegetables, our meat, even fish and egg. So what they say is better to get from grass grown, cows. You get your meat, and if you have it, you have your milk and butter from a source, not from grain fed, not from factory, made milks. If you can get it from a happy, a stress-free cow, that will be the best. So you try to get that from as I said, as natural and organic as possible. So, but how do I get you may say, how do I get my dosa, idli, puri? How can I live without these things? Well, there are certain alternatives. And if you're really, you dig deep and you're convinced that these are the ones that's causing all the problems, and you want to change, you want to reverse, and you want to treat all these deadly diseases, you can really do some research yourself. And I could advise that, there is what's called cauliflower rice, broccoli rice, and of course, your coconut and almond. These coconut and almond flowers are there. Of course, it's not very readily available, so easily to get as regular flower. You may have to hunt, you may have to go online, and you may have to go to Amazon and see a low carb flowers, and you will get these coconut and almond flowers. I'm using them right away. I have given up all rice and all wheat and all bread, and I use these flowers to make. You can make dosas, very tasty dosas. And now that you are permitted to eat fat, you do not have that fat phobia. You could use a lot of ghee and butter to make it very tasty. So you could make puris and you could make chapatis out of it. And as I told you, if you're out to beat a dog, you will surely find a stick. Well, what happens if you change? Well, the best part, what I have recognized is, of course, apart from other things, see, before I used to say, how can I ever sleep? Have an early dinner and get up till 8, because usually I used to have dinner by 8, 8:39. Then I'm worried I'll be hungry when I get up in the middle of the night. I keep a banana or two. I have a few biscuits by my bedside. When I feel hungry, I eat that. Early morning, when I get up at 4:35, I make myself tea with some sugar and all that. And all this, and now suddenly you say, don't eat for 12, 14 hours. It's not possible. It's not possible if you get hungry. Actually, the best part of eating healthy fats is that you get satiated and your appetite decreases. You really don't feel hungry. I simply cruise. I can easily fast for around 14 hours a day. That is one thing that I really found very, very useful. Of course, weight comes down, your insulin need comes down, insulin resistance comes down, your blood sugar comes down. These come automatically. Your fatty liver, I don't know, when I was a student, anybody who got admitted with a fatty liver, then we used to know that he's an alcoholic, because it was called alcoholic fatty liver. But today, it's no more alcoholics alone. It is non-alcoholic fatty liver. This fatty liver is caused by excess of carbohydrates. And because there is excess of carbohydrates, that is converted into fat by the liver and is stored there. That's how you get this non-alcoholic fatty liver, and we blame it on fat. Actually, the culprit is carbohydrates and not fats. And of course, I don't have to tell you about dental problems with sweets and carbs and cardiovascular diseases. All these come down. You can measure certain things like weight and your cholesterol and all your blood sugars. They come down within a few weeks. And now I've given you some facts and figures, but facts and figures don't change behavior. Sometimes stories do. So I thought I'll just take one more minute and tell you what exactly happened to me. Almost 2 years back, I was worried. I've been a diabetic for almost 25 years or so. When I was 40, and I thought, natural, maybe my parents had it, so I've got it. I've got to live with it. That's what I've been taught and told. So just go get yourself some medicine. And I met a doctor, and he gave me tablets, and I put myself on those tablets. And as years went by, tablets kept on increasing from 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6, and 8. And then the doctor said, "Now look, your tablets are not enough. You need to go on injection." So I even went on insulin for a year or so. So it was a downhill course. With all the treatment, it was becoming bad to worse. And along, diabetes doesn't, it has got very bad friends. You get a high cholesterols. Of course, you increase weight. You get kidney issues. You have eye problems. You have bladder problems. All this came, and then so much so that I was taking almost 12 tablets a day. Then in June 2019, I said I must do something, and I heard of that diets could help. Then I came across what's called a vegan diet, and this really helped me. Actually, my weight came down, my sugars also came down, my cholesterols were fair. But I followed that for about a year and a half. Actually, vegan is a fantastic diet. I mean, you give up. I am a born non-vegetarian. I gave up meat. I gave up milk, and it did help me. It is actually a high carb, low fat diet. Even vegans are they have a fat phobia. Then I realized at the end of a year and a half, I had struck a wall. That means the last set of my diabetic tablets were just going. But one other issue is that my blood triglycerides, that's the cholesterol level, shot up to about 2 to 3 times the normal. And I was getting worried and what was happening. Then I came across this low carb, healthy fat diet. I dived deep into it, and then I realized that it is the excess of carbs that is causing my problem. So I tweaked it a little, and then I converted myself into what is called a low carb, healthy fat diet, which I had explained to you. And that was in March 2021. And you won't believe, within 15 days of that, the last set of tablets for diabetes went down. My triglycerides, which had gone up 3 times, had come to normal levels within 15 days. And I was shocked. And then again, I started losing another 2 or 3 kgs. So much so today, I feel that I've completely reversed diabetes, which I've been having for last almost 25 years. Creatinine levels are low. Weight, of course, 10 kgs have been lost. As I told you, hunger and cravings have gone away. And I don't have to say that energy levels and sleep quality and overall well-being has gone up. So what I'm trying to tell you, friends, is just this, that diabetes is not a one-way street. Because doctors may tell you that now there is enough science to prove it. If you are a diabetic, or you have a relative or a friend or a family member who is a diabetic, kindly, I'm not saying just follow blindly what I said. This is science. I want you all to go dig a little deep, do your own research. Nowadays, everything is there at a click of a button. You get everything. You see whether diabetes really a one-way street? It is not. It has been scientifically proven that it's not a one-way street. It can be reversed. That's one thing. And now we all know that food is the cause. If food is the cause, food must be the cure and nothing else. If you are lactose intolerant, then they'll tell you not to take lactose. If you're gluten intolerant, they'll tell you not to take gluten. But if you're carbohydrate intolerant, nobody tells you not to take carbohydrates or reduce your carbohydrates. They say eat. I don't know, even the official, the dietary advice by all the government and their bodies, they all recommend they eat about 50 to 60% of carbs, which is just the opposite of what you really require. So kindly dig deep into it. I always say that, it is like the basin is overflowing. You have hired two people to keep swabbing the floor, but you don't realize that you need to shut the tap first to get results. And that's the easy way out. All I want to tell you all, friends, that if you all have realized one thing, that sugar is toxic, sugar is a killer. And if you can, please go into details about carbs and what's the harm it is causing, why you should reduce it. If you can just realize that and apply it, you will get fantastic results. Thank you. And I'll be happy if there are any questions to answer them.
Doctor, thank you very much. Very, very, very informative. I have two questions. One is this intermittent fasting and all the diet and everything. Will it also work for type 1 diabetes?
Yes, type 1 diabetes, of course, is a different ballgame altogether. But there is enough evidence now to show that this low carb diet and a healthy fat diet does help. But of course, it is not as easily treatable or curable or reversible as type 2. But there is a lot of things that you can gain by eating the right diet. That is, you could go online to what is called low carb down under. There's a movement in Australia, and there are actually type 1 diabetics who follow a particular type of a diet. And I could pass it on to Raj, some of the videos. You could have presentations by scientists and professors who have got a lot of help for people, even people with type 1 diabetes.
Okay, doctor. Thank you. Even the fasting bit, will the fasting?
Yeah, fasting is ideal, madam. There's absolutely no issue. But only thing is, type 1, you have to be careful about your insulin, how you regulate it, because you are always so much dependent on insulin, and you take your insulin and then fast, then you may get into trouble. So that has to be modulated and modified. And what I want to tell, one other thing that anybody wants to, they should not blindly go and, if you're a diabetic with all these tablets and injections and start very low carb diets, within a day or two, your sugars may come so low with your tablets that you may get into hypoglycemia, or even your blood pressure could get very low. So you need to modify your blood pressure tablets and diabetic tablets accordingly as soon as you start a low carb diet. You may need, if there's a doctor in the family or, some family doctor, you could take their help. But only thing is, somehow doctors don't have faith in this. I don't know when they will open their eyes, but that's an unfortunate thing. But this does work, and this is science. It's no more a fad.
Meghna, I thought you said you had two questions. Are they answered?
One more question. Yes, doctor. Doctor, with this current pandemic situation from last year, children are facing a lot of screen time. For example, my son is staring at the screen because of his school hours, continuous 5-6 hours with 5-minute, 10-minute break. And then followed by, they'll have some other extra class and tuition and all that. What can we do to prevent the strain on their eyes? Because most of the children are complaining about this continuous.
Because of this online classes and COVID, the last year or so, children are suffering. I know that personally because I have I've got 4 grandchildren, and most of them, having classes 3-4 hours a day. They're all complaining of the same issue. But certain things we need to follow, madam. Of course, classes are a must. We can't just leave them. But proper breaks between classes. And most important is that between classes or after classes, children jump from this screen, one screen to another screen. They, after the classes, they go to the phone and start playing games or watch TV. Absolutely no outdoor work. Kindly encourage them at least to spend half an hour to 1 hour outside with outdoor games, and off TV or off screens as far as possible when it is not absolutely necessary. And certain things you must observe is that breaks are very important. There's a rule called 20-20-20. Every 20 minutes, give the eye 20 seconds rest by looking away from the screen, something far away. That kind of break. And most important is they get eye strain because every time they stare at the screen, the eye forgets to blink. Usually, unknowingly, we blink about 15 to 16 times every minute. And in children who stare at the screen, not only children, adults who work on screens for over 10, 12 hours, their blink frequency comes down more than 50-60%. They blink 4-5 times a minute. That causes a lot of strain on the eyes. That causes headache, eye strain, redness, and all this. So see that they blink frequently and take breaks, and to avoid unnecessary digital time as far as possible.
Okay, thank you, doctor. I've heard of these Blu-ray.
Yeah, these blue blocking glasses are good, but nevertheless, if you're again going to go from one screen to the other screen and then TV, it's better to give them some break and distract them. It's difficult. Actually, we can't blame the children. They've been, tied up within four walls for a year or two. They have no friends, no socializing. And so they get addicted to these phones and games. So these are things that you can avoid. But blue blocking glasses are good. You could try them, not an issue.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Good evening, doctor. Myself, Keshav Singh here. I
Namaste,
just want to know whether 2 to 3 meals a day with sufficient quantity is good, or staggered 5 meals a day with small quantities is good.
The ideal way is the less frequent, the better. The theory is just this, that more, because we eat a lot of carbs, whatever meals you take, we are going to take a lot of carbs. Every time you eat carbohydrates, that is your rice, wheat, or your snacks, your bakery products, they are all filled with sugar and unhealthy fats actually. But this is a sugar that spikes the sugar in the food, that spikes your sugar in the blood, that spikes insulin, and that insulin spiking 5-6 times a day. Every time you eat, it goes up. Insulin goes up, then your sugars come down, then you feel hungry again, then you eat. That actually, it's the kind of food that you're eating that is forcing you to eat 6 times. And unfortunately, doctors also tell you that more number of meals are better for you. Actually, I don't think that's right. Best is you should try to reduce your meals to 2 or maximum 3. Avoid the snacks. But most important is what you eat during this meal is more important than the meal itself. If you could reduce your carbs and increase healthy fats, you do not feel hungry. Once you do not feel hungry, you will not feel the necessity to have a snack in between. So naturally, the frequency comes down. And this is where the intermittent fasting helps, because that's the time you're not giving the body any carbohydrates. And that's the time insulin normally comes down, the insulin resistance comes down, and slowly your diabetes starts reversing. But definitely, if you should not have more carbs, even if you're having 1 meal a day or 3 meals, your carbs must be reduced. You should take healthy fats and, of course, moderate proteins. Carbohydrates is the culprit. It's the villain.
Okay.
We can substitute by ragi.
Pardon, sir? Substitute?
By ragi.
No. All ragi, millet, all of them, they say they are good, but they're not good enough. They have a lot of carbohydrates. They spike your sugars. See, now that I told you, I wear this glucose monitor. It is available. It's a little expensive though. Every 10 minutes, if I eat ragi, if I eat millet, if I eat a banana, half an hour I can find out where my sugar is, and all of them spike it. This continuous glucose monitor, I think it's a game changer. And soon, I'm sure, when it's available freely and at a lesser rate, everybody, including the doctors, will realize that these things are not good. What spikes your sugars? Because once in a way you just prick your finger and find your sugar high or low. It makes no sense. It is constant monitoring that is necessary.
Okay, Dr. Bhujan Shetty, I have a question which might give an answer to many people's questions. Can we hear from you? What exactly do you eat from morning to evening?
That's right. This is a question I am very right. I told you, morning, of course, I do get up a little early. I do not have my, as usual, bed tea or coffee or anything. I have some warm water. I do my exercises, and my breakfast is around 8 o'clock. For my breakfast, I have what is called, one more thing, of course, there's so many things we need to go in, what is called a bulletproof coffee. You can go online, bulletproof coffee. It is nothing but it's coffee with MCT oil. It's a form of a coconut oil and, some butter and all that. It's very strange, but definitely not sugars. You can have it black, or if you must have sugar-free, you could have what's called monk fruit juice, or you could have stevia. These are the two the sweeteners that's acceptable, not others, because other sweeteners are very dangerous. If you really need sugar, some people can manage black coffee, but it has a lot of oil and a lot of fat that has absolutely no carbohydrates. So that will give you a lot of energy. And I do have either an omelette to an egg with a lot of vegetables, with cheese, and with, I can use butter, whatever I want with that omelette. That gives me a lot of energy. So these two things will keep me going till 12, 12:30. I don't need anything. And I've hardly eaten any carbohydrates, if you would know that. Okay. Then for lunch, again, as I told you, initially I was having what's called cauliflower rice. It's just cauliflower grated and, made into either, boil it and fried rice and mix it with more vegetables and all that. No starchy vegetables. And that you can have with any amount of curry you want. I told you, all vegetable curries, all any amount of coconut is fine. And nowadays there are a lot of, if you go online, how to make bread and how to make dosa and all that. This I do have fish now. I do have fatty fish like sardines, salmon, and I really used to enjoy, this fried stuff and all that, because I was so much frightened of fat. I had avoided all these years. Now I'm enjoying it. I have deep fried fish and I really enjoy that. Again, there are no carbs. There's just fat there. And in the evening, I just have one more cup of coffee and maybe some, all these nuts that I said there, they're okay. No carbs again. And for dinner, actually, I really don't feel much hungry. And both for my lunch and dinner, I have salads. I eat an avocado a day, half in the afternoon, half at night, make a salad with olive oil and, with cucumber and tomato, and big bowl of that. I have 2 bowls of that every day. That's very low carbohydrates. And I'm sure this will keep my carbohydrates below 10%. My proteins I get from the fish, egg. Of course, you could ask Yamuna how you will do it with the keto. I mean, there are vegan ketos also. Of course, it's very restricted. You can get your proteins from plant sources. You can get your fats from plant sources. But you have to, the main idea is not high fat. Idea is low carbohydrate. If you can keep your low carbohydrate, then the body will start learning to use your fats. And fats, I told you, you have 100 times more fats than carbohydrates. You will never go hungry. Actually, overnight, if you don't eat anything, your body is slowly burning your fats away, because you've got 200,000 calories of fats in your body. So you don't feel hungry. But only thing is, body is not tuned to it. I showed you that truck, it has got 100 times more fuel in that big tank, but is unable to use it because there's no plumbing. It cannot use that fuel. It can only use this 200 or 500 liters of its own tank, but not that 200,000 liters there. So also this body, once it learns to use, and the fuel that is converted from fat, it's called ketones. That is a cleaner fuel actually. But only thing is, we are not giving the body a chance to use it. You have to train the body. It may take a week or 2 for that. Initially, you'll get a little disturbed, but after a week or 2, you'll be very, very happy. That's my diet. It's not too difficult. Of course, it's a little bit of trial and error. You need a lot of help from your spouse. My wife is really cooperative. Anytime I go online, find some these recipes, I pass it on to her. Then we sit together. Where do you get all the raw, the raw material, and get it, and trial and error? What tastes good for me? I have it. But one thing I must tell you: in these last 3 months, I must be eating at least 3 times more fats than her. She's a regular eater. She's not a diabetic. But I actually, even if she's not a diabetic, I feel that she should get into my diet, but I'm giving her time. but I eat 3 times more fats. And she actually has high cholesterol. She takes tablets for high cholesterol. And we tested our blood the other day. I have a better cholesterol readings than hers. She eats 1/3 of the fats that I eat. So the actual theory is eat fat to burn fat. But you have to see, you can't eat high fats, eat high carbohydrates, and then hope to reduce your weight and reduce your fat. It doesn't work that. You have to reduce your carbohydrates, eat healthy fats. You can burn all that away. You will become, I've lost 10 kgs. I told you unintentionally. I'm not, actually, I do not want to reduce any further. My wife is saying, you're looking so thin and nobody can recognize you. I said, but I feel better. It's better to feel, healthy inside than healthy outside.
Wow, great.
So, just a small question here.
Yeah,
When you're talking about fats, what sort of fats? Can you give an example? What fat are you talking about where we can eat?
See,
And nuts.
Fats.
What are these nuts?
nuts.
Yeah.
Nuts are, of course, you have to go slow on cashew nuts and ground nuts. They have got a little more carbs than normal. You can't eat excess of them. But all other nuts, your Brazil nut, macadamia, your walnut, your pista, all these can be eaten, sir.
Almonds also good?
Almonds, yes. Almonds, yes.
also
I eat
also
them. They are good for snacking. In case you want to eat something for snack, you can take that.
I can understand.
Yeah, you can eat that. Then other fats, I told you, oils. In oils, the seed oils are very, very dangerous. They are bad fats, sir. You only oil,
Okay.
they should be natural as possible. As I told you, coconut oil, cold pressed coconut oil is ideal.
Yes.
Avocado oil and olive oil.
Olive oil.
These are the 3 oils you could use as much as you want. You can fry.
Ghee also is good.
Ghee is
Ghee
good.
and good butter is
Ghee and
also good.
butter. But try to get it from a good source, sir. Try to get it from an organic source.
No,
we
make ghee at home.
Ghee, butter, cheese. You have all what you want for your taste. So you can replace your carbohydrates with this, and you will see you will not recognize yourself after 2 months. This is the problem. See, I tell you why. The history is that some 50, 60 years back, some very influential, very powerful doctors came out with the theory that people are becoming obese and they are having heart attacks, and they suddenly correlated an association that they are fat, so these fats are the cause. And of course, they got a lot of support, and everybody spoke about it, and it went so deep that government started advising have low fats, saturated fats are bad. So when you say when you bring down one thing, you have to eat something, no? So carbs automatically went up. And then not only just carbs, the processed carbs, the sugars. You may say 50, 60 years back, of course, our parents only ate carbohydrates. But what was their lifestyle? They worked in the field almost 8-10 hours. And what is the quantity they ate? The most important is, what about the sugars? How often did we have sweets in 50, 60 years back? Once in a way, when you go for a ceremony, when you go for a wedding, you had some sweets. Here you have from morning, evening, night, everything is sweet. Birthday sweet, anniversary sweet, celebration sweet. Even when somebody passes away, it is sweets. It is sweet. And that has caused all the problem in the last 50 years.
Yes.
What is your take on these chia seeds and flax seeds?
No, they're good, sir. Flax seeds and chia seeds are okay. They are good nutrients. They don't have too much of carbs. You can have them. There's no doubt.
I have a question for you. For all the alternatives that what we were discussing, right? Most of the middle class families or even low income households may not be able to afford these. I really wish, in all your journey, what are the other local alternatives that you would suggest for a family that probably spends anywhere between 4,000 to 6,000 rupees a month on their groceries and thing. So this is just on in the pocket. See the way I would look at. I have experienced it, and I'm saying we are spending money on wrong things on both the sides. One on the wrong food, again on the medicines also. If we fix one part, it takes time. It's a behavior, and you need to. It's hard. And you have all possible barriers for not doing it. But how do we put this mindset? And what are the alternatives?
Yeah. See, actually, I have also been trying these diets and recipes by trial and error. It is a little expensive because it's rare, it's difficult to get and all that. But if you really go to see if you're sick and if you're on diabetes, the amount of money you spend on doctors, hospitals, medicines, injections, and it's going better, it's going from worse and worse and more of medicines you require. Definitely, diet is less expensive. Even if you have to go for one surgery because of your diabetes, whether it be heart or eye or your kidney, whatever, your dialysis, just imagine. For all that put together, definitely this money is, hardly a fraction of it. And although we say it is rich man's disease, diabetes, as you said, it's not a rich man's disease. Now it's there in middle class and lower middle class, but they need to change. The whole problem is the junk food is cheap. Junk food is addictive. That's why people have, even the middle and lower class, they just enjoy it. But the whole problem is, in the long run, what's going to happen? You're going to destroy your health. That's what we have to realize. And then with whatever, see, it's not too difficult. You can make anything with coconut. You can make coconut curry. You can use coconut oil. You can make it tasty. You can use egg. Fish is not very expensive. So within that framework, whatever you can do, try. And slowly, slowly, you build up what you can afford and what you cannot and what suits you. It's, of course, individuality is very important. It's not one size fit all. So that we need to see and how best we can adjust.
I heard this pure jungle honey breaks down the carbs and the fats. It burns out. Pure jungle honey taking regular this thing. This is a one part question. The second question is, I also heard doctors saying that instead of having refined oil, it's better to have seed oils. I know that coconut oil and olive oil is more good, but still they prefer that seed-based oils are more better than these refined oils. These two questions, please.
First, honey, sir. Whatever said and done, honey has too much of sugar. You take a little honey, and of course, if you measure your sugar, you will know where you stand. So there is no place for honey in our diets. It as a low-carb diet, there is no place, whether it is jungle or original or however pure it is, no place for honey. Next is seed oil are all refined oils, sir. Why we say they call it seed oil, vegetable oil? All these oils cannot be made very easily. They are put under tremendous pressure. They are put under a lot of chemicals, heat. They are processed. There are a lot of toxins added to it to extract that oil. So much that they lose all their properties, and in turn they become what's called trans fats, actually, almost. So the best is get the oil from even coconut. It should be at least pressure. That's why they say cold pressed coconut oil. You just get it so easily. From olive oil, you get it so easily. Only these oils, which can be very easily got without processing, without refining, they are the best. And other oils must be avoided. It's not good for.
So this is cold pressed coconut, cold pressed groundnut oil is there, sir? Cold pressed groundnut
Yes,
oil.
they say it's okay, but as far as I have read, I feel coconut oil is much better, or olive oil or avocado oil. All these are okay, but groundnut, of course, I don't know how they do it. But if it is cold pressed, if it's not really processed too heavily, then that should be all.
Exceptional, amazing session we had, and I think this is a need of the hour, and this is going to break stereotypes in the current situation, and this is going to set a context for the upcoming generations to come. And I'm so glad, as a doctor, you're speaking about it so openly and sharing your own personal journey, sir. It's pretty inspirational. Not many people at cost of what they want to share, and you're so open to share your own day in, day out. Thank you so much. Lastly, on behalf of myself, C4C, as well as all the participants here, I'm sure all the knowledge, information that you have shared today will definitely help us face the challenges of at the present times, that what we are going through. And it feels more empowered and confident manner. It's going to happen sooner or later. People are going to take this one step at a time, and it's going to be a huge moment. And it'll also help us succeed in staying healthy all through. And we would like to particularly thank you for enlightening us about various aspects of the eye donation. And especially on the monetary side, it was so crisp and clear, saying that it's a pure donation. It's the best donation that somebody can do, At the end of the session, I will again, my favorite actor, Dr. Rajkumar, I'm again share that link here. He has, at a, such graciously his pledge with no questions asked. And in the video, he also says that just not me, for all the coming generations would pledge. That's what he's requested. And all of you, if you have not donated your eyes, in your family, in your friends, in your circle, even in a month, if you speak to one person at a time, you will be able to, support Narayan Nethralya's larger mission. And good health is the biggest asset anyone can have. And anything which helps the asset grow, this is not mutual funds, this is the health funds actually. That's most important. And so much, it was so exceptionally good. Dr. Bhujank Shetty, I also thank all the participants for your role, your questions, and making this a successful once again. Please do practice. The ask is, we hear and again we go back tomorrow to the same old rut. All what I want to say is, probably one meal at a time, change it. Probably take it in a short bites, like, probably start a week, 3 weeks.
One bite at a time.
Yeah.
One bite at a time. And stay healthy, stay safe, take care. Good night, and fantastic. Thanks. Thank you, everyone. Namaste.
Thank you, Dr. Bhujank Shetty. Thank you all. It was a wonderful session. Thank you so much, sir.